The historic ruling. On December 24, 2025, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a major blow to the Trump administration. In a 6-3 decision, the justices refused to lift a lower court injunction that prevents the deployment of National Guard troops in Illinois. This unsigned order marks the administration's second major loss in just 4 days, signaling a significant check on presidential power regarding domestic military use. The court's reasoning was straightforward. At this preliminary stage, the government failed to identify a clear source of authority that would allow the military to execute laws within the state of Illinois without the governor's consent. The regular forces dispute. The legal battle centered on a specific federal law. The administration argued that the president has the power to call up the Guard when regular forces are unable to execute federal laws. Interestingly, the Solicitor General contended that regular forces referred to civilian law enforcement like ICE. However, the Supreme Court majority leaned toward a different interpretation. They concluded that regular forces likely refers specifically to the full-time U.S. military. This means the president must first show that the actual military is unable to perform the function before he can federalize the National Guard for such domestic duties, a standard the administration failed to meet. The fierce dissent. The decision was not without controversy. Justice Samuel Alito, joined by Justice Clarence Thomas, issued a stinging 16-page dissent. Alito criticized the majority for departing from standard practice and focusing on the regular forces definition, which was originally raised by a friend of the court brief rather than the parties themselves. Alito argued that the safety of federal officers facing potentially lethal attacks during immigration enforcement should be the priority. Justice Neil Gorsuch also dissented, suggesting he would have granted the government's request based on the evidence of unrest provided by federal officials. Beyond Chicago, the Portland impact. This ruling has massive implications for other cities. In Portland, a federal judge had already barred the use of the National Guard to quell protests near ICE facilities, noting that the demonstrations were predominantly peaceful. Because the Supreme Court has now set this tone in the Chicago case, it becomes substantially harder for the administration to rely on the same laws to send troops into Portland or other cities with Democratic mayors. This case serves as a landmark test of whether a president can use the Guard as a domestic police force, ultimately affirming that state sovereignty and the U.S. Constitution still place strict limits on the commander-in-chief.